Go ahead, Mary.
The governor of Mississippi has responded to the president's comments yesterday, and he seems to have taken offense at some of the president's language. He says Mississippians don't need handlers. I just think we should trust Americans and not insult them. He's making an argument that this is really about personal liberty here. Does the president have any second thoughts about the language that he used yesterday, and how does comparing someone to a Neanderthal help convince them to change course and get on board with your public health message?
The behavior of a Neanderthal, just to be very clear, the behavior of. Look, I think the president, what everybody saw yesterday was a reflection of his frustration and exasperation, which I think many American people have, that for almost a year now, people across the country have sacrificed. And many times they haven't had information they need from the federal government. They haven't had access to a greater understanding of what the public health guidelines should look like. And those include many, many people in Mississippi, in Texas, in Ohio, Florida, in every state across the country. And, he believes that with more than 500,000 Americans' lives lost, with families that continue to suffer, that it's imperative that people listen across the country, whether they live in a red state or a blue state, to the guidance of public health experts. At the same time, you've watched the president closely for some time, Mary, as you all have. He's going to engage with and talk with people who disagree with him on a range of issues, including this one. But he believes that if we're going to get this pandemic under control, we need to follow public health guidelines. He simply was asked the American people to abide by wearing masks for 100 days. We're at about day 40. Are we at day 40? Around there. 60 more days. That's what he's asking, and he's certainly hopeful that businesses and people across the country will continue to do that.
Has he reached out to Governors Reeves and Abbott to convince them to try and change course here?
I don't think his view on mask wearing is a secret. They're certainly familiar with it. He's talked about it many, many times, and I'm certain when he speaks with them next, he will convey that directly.
The president has said that he hopes, he's hopeful that by this time next year we may be getting some semblance of normalcy again. Mm-hmm. Is there a concern that as we see states like Mississippi and Texas take these actions, if others follow suit, that could shift the timeline, that a few states could set back the timeline here?
Well, what the president has said publicly and certainly conveyed to all of us is he can't do this alone. The federal government cannot do this alone. This is going to require additional sacrifice from the American people. He doesn't think that's easy. None of us think that's easy. But he has ordered enough vaccines to ensure everybody in the country is vaccinated. And we will have those vaccines by the end of May. But it will require ongoing social distancing, ongoing mask wearing, as we've been talking about, and it will also require the American people getting the vaccine. He can't force individuals to do that. So he can just project the recommendations of public health officials. He can take steps, as he has over the last couple of days, to ensure that communities are prioritized who are playing key roles in society. But he can't do it on behalf of the public, and it is going to require the public to play an important and vital role here, too.
Just one question on vaccines. The president has been pretty critical of the prior administration's handling of this pandemic, saying you inherited a mess here. But when it comes to vaccinations, you are following some of the same playbook here. So does the prior administration deserve some credit for laying the groundwork?
Which ones are we following?
Well, for instance, former Trump HHS Assistant Secretary Admiral Brett Giroir has said that you're following 99% of the playbook they created on vaccines. He has said that the prior administration deserves more credit here for at least getting the ball rolling on some of these.
I don't think anyone deserves credit when 500,000 people in the country have died of this pandemic. So what our focus is on, and when the president's focus is on when he came into office just over a month ago, was ensuring that we had enough vaccines. We are going to have them now. We had enough vaccinators and we had enough vaccine locations to get this pandemic under control. There's no question, and all data points to the fact that there were not enough of any of those things when he took office. We are open-eyed about the challenge we continue to live under, and that's why he has been focused every single day and doing everything possible to get the pandemic under control. But there were shortages in all those areas, which were preventing us from moving forward on getting the pandemic under control. Go ahead.
I have a couple on the COVID bill, but to start with, the previous administration put an end to regular reporting of specific troop levels in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. I understand this is the Pentagon's bailiwick, but will the president commit to once again reporting specific troop levels in those three countries under his administration?
Well, certainly, we, of course, would work with the Pentagon and our national security team to ensure that transparency remains a priority, or is reprioritized, I should say, under this administration. I mean, I'd have to talk to our national security team and our team at the Pentagon about any restrictions they have, but that remains a vital priority for this president and something I know he's projecting to his entire team.
And on the COVID bill, last night when the president was speaking to House Democrats, he said, I know we're all making small compromises, as he tried to work everybody to support the bill or thank them for supporting their version of the bill. What exactly has the president asked moderates to compromise on in this process up to this point?
You'd have to ask them that question. The president has been clear that he is unmovable on the size of the package, $1.9 trillion. And as you know from covering the Hill, that was a size that some expressed concern about. He has been unmovable about his view that Americans who need help the most should get $1,400 checks. There were some who spoke openly about their concern about that. And he has been very clear that state and local governments need assistance now to keep cops on the beat, to keep teachers, to keep firefighters employed, and to keep state and local governments functioning. I'm sure there may be other issues that they have concerns about. I'll let them speak to that. But he has been insistent that the scope of the challenge requires this size of a package, and in order to address these twin crises that we're facing, it needs to have these key components included.
And then the last one, again from the president last night to House Democrats, he made the point to them that this will make everything more possible to get done. I think I'm quoting properly there. Passing this now. Is that the kind of theory of the case here? You get this done at this scale, and all of a sudden some of the difficulties you may have in the U.S. Senate become less so because people see that you were able to produce. I just want to make sure that I understand kind of his thought process going forward.
I'm not sure what the context of that comment was. Can you tell me more of the context of it?
Yeah, I don't have the full thing in front of me. Sorry about that. I was just struck because he said, I will paraphrase. Promise I'm being accurate when I paraphrase this. That the idea being that if they get this done, there will be more trust in government. And if there's more trust in government, therefore, people will be willing to get behind maybe the priorities that House Democrats have going forward, whether that's on infrastructure, whether that's on climate, any of those things. He didn't list those off. And so I guess that's my question is, does the administration look at the American Rescue Plan and say, this is our springboard to doing even more broad-based, more bold, in the words of the administration, legislative proposals in the future?
We don't look at it through as political legislative of a lens as you just outlined, but I will say that the president came into office knowing that getting the pandemic under control, helping address and put people back to work, the millions and millions of Americans who are struggling to make ends meet, the 1 in 7 American families that can't put food on the table, that he knew that those would be his top 2 priorities, his top 1, 2, 3, 4, pandemic, economic recovery. And that is what this package is meant to help address. And what I've heard him say, and this sounds consistent with that, while I don't know the full context of this, is that of course he wants to build his agenda beyond getting the pandemic under control, beyond addressing and stemming the tide of an economic crisis, because he believes that investing in infrastructure is imperative and long overdue. He believes that modernizing our immigration system is long overdue and is good for the American people, good for our economy. He believes there needs to be more done for caregiving. He believes we need to do more to protect our health, to ensure more people have access to health care. So there's no question that he views the early part of his presidency as focused on these twin crises, but he is hardly going to be done with his agenda and work once we have this package signed into law.